3 full Ironman triathlons. And it's funny because my first 2 that I did, I didn't really understand the benefits of healthy low glycemic eating, and I didn't lose any weight. I trained for 2 Ironmans and didn't lose a single pound, which doesn't make any sense. But then when I learned what low glycemic eating was, and now you're like, you know what, you take it for granted today what low glycemic eating is. 12 years ago, when you would say healthy low glycemic eating, people were like, what's the glycemic? They had no idea what that even meant. So making those changes, that was sort of the beginning of my journey. I lost weight. I lost 20 pounds, 2 sizes in 12 weeks, and kept it off and kept basically the same size with the exception of when I had my daughter. So I've really made it part of my mission in USANA to educate people about not only about healthy whole food eating, but how our body works and why we really need to pay attention to digestion and detoxification. At the end of today, you're going to learn more about the program that I developed. It's called the 30-Day Whole Body Detox. This will be the 7th year that we are running this program. It is a program that has that's great for people that are using USANA products because it has a whole food component. But not only that, it's also great for building business. So we're going to talk about that at the end of today. But first, let's talk about digestion and detoxification. And for me, this is really where we start to look at our optimal health journey. We look at the gut first. And, it's a great quote by Hippocrates, who's the father of medicine. All disease begins in the gut. And it's so true today. We understand more about the gut than we ever did, but we actually only understand really a small portion of what's actually going on in our gut. Before I go any further, I am remiss to have forgotten to say hello to our live stream audience. So thank you everyone who's watching on the live stream. I know you're there. I can see you on the camera, so we won't forget that you're there. And there's one more thing I wanted to mention. How many of you have ever heard Sue Ward speak? Do you guys know who that is? A few of you. Sue Ward is the Director of Nutrition at the Sanofi Medical Institute, which is the Institute for Holistic Healing that Dr. Wentz, the founder of USANA, actually founded in Mexico. And it's a really incredible place. Who has been there? Any of you? Oh, wow, a good portion. That's amazing. So she actually works there, and this is actually her presentation that she did at an event I went to about a year ago. And I was given permission to share the information with all of you. So some of this is from my own knowledge, and some of it comes from what I learned from Sue Ward. So you might have seen this presentation before, but know that it comes from one of the most respected experts that we work with in the health and nutrition at USANA and with Sanofi. So when we look at digestive wellness, we can start by talking about true health and our body's ability to digest foods completely. Now, how many of you guys have heard you are what you eat? Could we maybe expand that and say you are what you absorb and what you assimilate and what your cells actually take in, right? Because who knows someone who's super healthy, like they eat super healthy food, but they don't look very healthy, right? You're like, that's weird. Like you eat salads all the time. I see you eating salads, and yet you're not healthy. Your skin doesn't have a very good glow. You don't seem to have a lot of energy. So we can eat super healthy, but if we don't take care of our gut, we're not actually going to be super healthy. And then of course we need to eliminate waste naturally through healthy, normal detoxification. So detox isn't a season or a phase or a time of year. Detox is happening at every single moment in your body in many different ways. Okay, so did you know that digestion actually begins in your brain? Okay, close your eyes. And I want you to think about an ice cream sundae. I want you to think about the layers of ice cream, maybe chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry. I want you to imagine it's drizzled with like really unhealthy chocolate sauce and maybe some peanuts and sprinkles. All right, open your eyes. Did anyone start salivating a bit? Right? So digestion actually begins in your brain. One of my favorite tips to give about healthy digestion is to actually just stop for a minute before you eat and just look at your food. Just looking at your food actually gets your saliva going. Why do we need saliva? That actually is the beginning of the digestive process. And what it does is it sends a message to the stomach and says, start producing the acid that I need to break down my food. And it also sends messages to our pancreas, which not only creates insulin, but also some of our digestive enzymes. So this process, the brain sending a message to the stomach, do you guys know what that's called? You guys know this? Anybody? The brain sends a message to the stomach. What process is that? Say it louder. Someone said it right. Cell signaling, right? That's cell signaling. It's happening all the time, whether we're conscious or not. So for those in the room that have experience in sauna and you understand the new technology, it actually enhances the body's natural cell signaling that's happening all of the time. So digestion begins in our brains, but who can tell me what the very first and most important step in healthy digestion would be? Does anyone know? Who said that? Yes, you did. It is chewing. You are correct. Chewing your food. So, although this is funny, there's a picture of a dog. I have a dog now. We got a BC dog. So when we moved here, we got a dog. It's actually a Nova Scotia duck-tolling retriever. So it's a dog from Nova Scotia, but we got it in BC. Now, dogs don't always chew their food. They tend to just scarf it down. But I love the picture of the dog with the teeth to remind us that we have teeth for a reason. So there's only one place in our body where we have teeth. It's in our mouth. There's no teeth in our throat. There's no teeth anywhere in our digestive tract. So what that means is if the food isn't broken down by chewing, if it's too big, it's going to cause problems later. So I want you to think about right now, when you eat, how often do you chew? And if you're drinking water during your meal, are you washing down your food with water? So my husband, he loves it when I tell this story. My husband used to basically have a sip of water after every bite of food. And I was like, you're not chewing your food. Like if you need water to wash down your food, with every bite, you need to chew your food a little more. That was many years ago now, and he does chew his food. So keeping our teeth healthy is actually a super important part of healthy digestion. Just a different way to think about healthy digestion, keeping your teeth really, really healthy. And it's funny, the people often who are most worried about healthy teeth are the ones that are in their 70s and 80s and they're losing all their teeth. But we really obviously have to start thinking about our teeth now while they're still healthy. Okay. So actually, before I get into the gut, I don't have a slide that shows this. I'm going to go back to this one. So in our stomach, does anyone have an idea of how long food bits actually stay in our stomach? Or even if we're taking supplements, how long does that stuff actually stay in our stomach? What's the transit time in our stomach? Does anyone know? Yeah, 20 minutes to 3 hours. Healthy, though, it should be about 20 to 30 minutes if your digestion is working optimally. It doesn't linger it shouldn't sit in your stomach. If stuff's sitting in your stomach, does that feel good? Right? That feels awful, right? So I have a really bad intolerance to raw garlic and onions. Pretty bad. It'll just sit there. And it'll sit there. And even if I take digestive enzymes before I eat them, it'll still sit there. Even if I take digestive enzymes, it'll still sit there. It just doesn't work. But does that not feel so uncomfortable? So the optimal transit time is 20 to 30 minutes. After it leaves our stomach, if that food hasn't been broken down properly, what do you think happens? If it hasn't been broken down by the stomach acid, what do you think happens to those chunks of food? Nothing, right? Like they can't get broken down any further. There's no breakdown in the intestine. So the next part of our digestive system is the small intestine. I'm curious if someone might know what percentage of our nutrients are absorbed in the small intestine. Does anybody have a guess? 80, 90, closer to 90%. So if you're not chewing your food, and if it's not being dissolved in the stomach, when it gets to the small intestine, it's going to be too big to absorb. What do you think happens if you eat a kale salad and you don't chew your kale? It's going to come out the other way, and you won't get any of the benefits of kale. right? So you can be eating a super healthy diet, but if you're not even chewing your food, it has no chance of you actually being able to absorb that nutrition. Does that make sense? So now what happens is in our small intestine, okay, there's a barrier. And the barrier in the small intestine, can you guys see that? Am I in front of it? Let me go. Am I too far if I go over here? Okay. So if we look at the barrier, this is just an idea of what the intestinal barrier looks like, okay? Obviously, it's microscopic. We can't see it. Now, these villi here, normally, they're tightly woven together, which means that chunks of food that aren't digested can't get through. But if we have an inflamed gut, if we have a gut that hasn't been treated very well, if we have been abusing our bodies and not taking good care of it for years and years and years, what happens is these spaces start to appear in between these little microscopic villi. So what happens here is stuff starts to get through, stuff that's not supposed to get through. And that's where the problems begin. So you guys have heard of leaky gut, right? Have you ever heard of grain brain? Anybody ever heard of grain brain? Okay, grain brain, what that means is how many people, like I have a pretty bad intolerance to wheat and gluten. How many people like just don't feel good when they have bread, wheat, or gluten? How many get foggy brain if they eat bread or wheat or gluten? So if you ever get foggy brain from eating wheat, bread, gluten, it's because it's actually going through the barrier and it's circulating up to your brain where it's not supposed to be. So you get that fogginess from the gluten that was not well digested by your body. Isn't it crazy? Like you just never think that a food that I'm going to ingest is going to affect how my brain feels because it just doesn't make any sense. Why would something that would a food affect my brain? Like how is that even possible? When I first started learning about this, I was just totally shocked by how much there is. And the other thing is if we have food sensitivities and other inflammatory diseases, often they're caused because of leaky gut. So which is why we want to look first here. So if you think about things like Hashimoto's disease, Crohn's, colitis, sarcoidosis, eczema, lupus, osteoporosis, all of these inflammatory diseases, if we're not looking at the gut as part of the solution, we could be in a situation where we're using medication forever because we've never looked at trying to heal the gut. I'm not saying we can heal a disease through the gut, but we can certainly help symptoms if our gut is healthy and we're properly absorbing our nutrition and nutrients. So if we have a strong barrier, we're going to have strong digestion. So here are the things that affect our barrier. I will read them because I'm not sure we can see it at the back. So things that we want to reduce in our lifestyle is aspirin or NSAID. So those are the Advil type ibuprofen things. I don't know about you. So I grew up as a gymnast, and gymnasts take a lot of ibuprofen, and a lot of gymnasts actually have really, really serious gut issues. And you're supposed to take those with food so it doesn't hurt your gut if you need to take them. Processed food, chemical food additives, wheat and gluten I already talked about, alcohol, caffeine, soda. I got a soda stream for Christmas, which I love because you're just carbonating your own water, and I just add fresh lemon and lime. It's the best thing ever. Excess medication. So listen, some people need pharmaceutical medications to deal with something that needs a medical solution, and there's often a good reason for it. But what's important is if you're on a number of different medications, is to work with your physician and perhaps a naturopath, someone who has experience in this area, and say, okay, do I need to be on all of these things? Because it is affecting your gut, it's affecting your liver. So just taking a holistic look, but there's conditions and cases where medication is part of our lifestyle, so we reduce as much as we can of everything else. Stress. Anybody have stress? Anyone? Anyone? Nobody? Stress can be good, stress can be bad, but it's going to cause inflammation. Dental toxins, of course, if you have any mercury amalgam fillings. If you've ever seen Dave Wentz, who was on the Dr. Oz show, he was like brushing the teeth with the amalgam fillings, and you could see how much of the mercury was being released into the air. So it's something to think about. Biological dentistry. I don't really know if there's that much here in BC. I'm sure you must. It's Like, I feel like BC's ahead of Ontario in terms of biological dentistry. So something to look into. Dr. Wentz wrote a book called A Mouthful of Poison. And of course, environmental toxins, which I'm going to get into because that's its whole own category. So then how do we support this? So we're going to support it with healthy digestive enzymes. So Kendra's going to go into really explaining what digestive enzymes are and the use on digestive enzymes. But just so you know, enzymes are what we need to digest our food. Our body manufactures them and makes them, but for many reasons, we often are deficient or they're not working as effectively. Fiber. Who loves fiber, right? Come on. Just me? Fiber G? All day? Yes, every day. Fiber is, so there's a big myth that people are protein deficient, like all these like high protein diets and we don't get enough protein. Protein deficiency doesn't actually exist as a condition. What does exist is deficiency in fiber. 97% of the population does not get enough fiber. Now in this room, it's probably only half of you that don't get enough fiber because we're a different, category of the half the people in here are probably already making really good choices in adding fiber. But you can really change someone's digestion through adding fiber. Kendra's going to explain the different kinds of fiber and what they do and why they're both important. And then probiotics, which I'm going to get into in quite a bit of detail, are also critically important for nutrition and health. So we want it to stay intact. Sue Ward was telling us about a Sanoviv study that they did. So at Sanoviv, they do clinical trials on the staff. So not on the patients that come or the clients, they do them on the staff. And one was a 12-week study to see if they could improve the intestinal barrier. So you can actually see if you have leaky gut through a blood test. And what they found after 12 weeks, supporting with probiotic digestive enzymes, fiber-rich foods, the leaky gut was actually healing in 12 weeks. So this is something that you can actually create beautiful healing. So probiotics. So as I mentioned, Kendra is going to explain probiotic, but she's also going to explain what a prebiotic is. A prebiotic feeds a probiotic. So they're both really important, but I'm going to let her give you all the details on that. But probiotics, if you only supplemented with one thing every single day, a probiotic, our gut is just, there's so much happening in our gut that we're just starting to understand, and we need to take really, really good care of our gut. So we're going to talk about, super fun, our gut microbiome. Who's excited about the microbiome? Just me? Who's heard of the microbiome? Okay, that's why you're not excited about it. So this is very new research. USANA's actually partnered with the United States government and the White House on the microbiome project. So we thought the DNA and unraveling the genes, like that was the deal. Like we figured that out. We figured out the human body. Not so. Turns out there's so much happening in our gut with this microbiome that's where the research is going. So it's pretty exciting. So I'll go this way. So what it is there's communities. There's over 100 different strains of probiotics that live in our gut and around our body as well. So there are actually different communities, but most of it is in our gut. And they outnumber our cells, this is super important, 10 to 1. So when you think of your body, you're actually just a walking sack of bacteria. Sorry. You're welcome. But we have so many more bacteria than human cells, which is why this is such a new and exciting frontier in terms of medicine and natural medicine, because there's so many opportunities. So beneficial bacteria live all over our bodies, but are especially concentrated in the gastrointestinal tract. Now, of course, bacteria can sometimes be lethal, as we know. I personally know more than most, unfortunately, what can happen when you get a serious bacterial infection. So, almost 3.5 years ago now, I had a miscarriage and had to have a D&C. And I got an extremely rare bacterial infection. And it was extremely serious. And I almost lost my life. I was in a medically induced coma for a week. And But thankfully, we caught literally 24 hours later, and I would not have made it. People that get the kind of bacterial infection I have, by the time they get to the hospital, it's too late. They can't be saved because your organs start to fail and you go into sepsis. So I actually recovered from this. I was in sepsis. All of my organs, you can't have, there's no residual damage from a serious bacterial infection. And I know that one of the reasons why I healed more quickly after is because of my USANA lifestyle. You know, it's interesting. We talk about the liver. When I was in the hospital, they had to give me the same kind of medication they would give someone who's an alcoholic. The doses were so high because my liver was processing the medication so quickly. So when your liver's working efficiently, you actually process medication quickly. So the medication they were using to keep me sedated, they had to give me more than they would because my body was just still working so efficiently. So it's really amazing how that I'd been taking care of my body for so many years and then ended up in a really life-threatening situation. And it ended up being one of the factors as to why I'm still here. So I know more about bacteria than I'd like to know. All right, on that somber note, let me continue about why I'm so excited about the gut. So did you know that you actually make nutrients in your gut? When you have a healthy gut, your body actually makes some nutrients in the gut. So vitamin K, your B vitamins such as biotin, thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, and B12 can be made in your gut. Another reason to keep our gut healthy. 75% of our immune system is the gut. You guys knew that, right? You guys knew that our immune system lives in our gut, which is, again, why probiotic, right? If you have a friend who's always getting sick in the winter, well, get them on proglucamine first, obviously. But, think about a probiotic. Like if you feel like a scratchy throat, this is my trick, is I feel a scratchy throat, I pour probiotic down my throat. It really works. And probiotics do help with regular detoxification. This is really cool. This is why people say, do I need to take a probiotic every day? I say, yes, because the bulk of what you eliminate is bacteria. So when we eliminate, it's bacteria. The majority is our bacteria. So good bacteria, bad bacteria, it's all leaving every day, which is why we need to take a probiotic every single day. Have you ever had a gut feeling, right? Your gut intuition, that's a real thing. Okay, so there's more neurotransmitters in the gut than in the brain. That means that our feel-good hormones, like serotonin, are actually produced in our gut. So just think about the impact on someone you know who's dealing with a mental illness. If you can help them deal with their gut health, right? So if your gut is healthy and you're producing more serotonin, it will have a positive effect on your mood. Crazy, right? Like this research is all new in the last 4 or 5 years. It's really starting to become to the forefront. So it's really exciting to see what we can do. And of course, in order to be healthy, first we start with the gut. Okay, so now we're gonna talk about signs of an unhealthy gut. So stand up if any of these have ever affected you. Constipation or diarrhea, frequent colds, food sensitivities, allergies. Make sure you're standing up. Depression, anxiety, mood disorders, fatigue, headaches, skin rashes, acne, eczema, psoriasis, asthma, thyroid issues, blood sugar, diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's or colitis, irritable bowel disease. That's it. No one's standing up. Remember, stand up if you've been affected by any of these in your lifetime, even though you might not be so much anymore. Obesity, overweight, sugar cravings, right? Sugar cravings. That's a big one. All right, pretty much everyone, right? Okay, you can sit back down. Now, many of you, like me, may have healed your gut, but know that we've all kind of been through it. So what I'm going to talk about now is detoxification, which is really the key to better health. And I'm going to talk about what it is, why we're concerned about it, when is a good time to do it, and how do we do that. So what is detoxification? Well, detoxification is the removal of harmful substances from the body. That includes all substances that affect your mind, your body, and spirit. Detoxification, there's 5 major organs: your liver, kidney, gut, lungs, and skin. So often we think of liver when we're thinking about detoxification, but your whole body's involved. I have clients that do the 30-day whole body detox, and it shows up on their skin, unfortunately. I don't know if anybody's ever had a client who's taken the HEPA Plus, the liver support from USANA, and they break out. And that's how their body detoxifies naturally, unfortunately for them. So there's internal toxins. So internal toxins, for example, who's ever worked out and you like feel the burn, right? That burn is lactic acid. It is a waste product that we must eliminate, okay? External toxins, I'm going to go into a whole list of those because unfortunately we're surrounded by those. And then emotional toxins. What do we mean by emotional toxins? Well, our cells are bathed in a medium all day long. And that medium includes the toxin or the hormones that help regulate our emotions. So if we have lots of serotonin, it's good. But if we have lots of thank you. I could not remember cortisol. Cortisol and adrenaline, because we're always stressed and it's coursing through our body, that actually has a negative effect on how we feel. It affects our gut health. It affects inflammation. So why do we need to detox? Well, one of the biggest reasons is because we are surrounded by external toxins. So let's take a quick look at this list. Hands up if you're affected by any of these on a daily or weekly basis. Plastics, pesticides, weed killer, Roundup. If you eat non-GMO wheat, you're affected by this. Food additives, bug spray, fire retardants could be from furniture, nail polish or personal care products, laundry detergent, fabric softener sheets. I was so sad when I found out fabric softener sheets were not good for you. Anyways, I know I use the dryer balls now. It's not the same. High fructose corn syrup or processed food, commercial underarm deodorant. Keep your hands up. All right, next page. Cell phones, Wi-Fi, household cleaners, dry cleaned clothes, microwave ovens, tap water, popular toothpaste, any toothpaste that is blue with sparkles or sprinkles in it. Prescription medication, air pollution, heavy metals, or dental fillings. Everyone's hand should be up, right? Was it too much of a workout to leave your hand up all that time? So even if we have an amazing lifestyle, an amazing diet, we are all affected by external toxins. And our toxic load is so much higher. So I have a 7-year-old, and I want you to think like her toxic load growing up is thousands of times bigger than my toxic load growing up. You might say, well, we grew up like this and we're fine. Well, actually, we're not. So I'm 42 now. My sister's 38. My sister's had 3 of her close friends. 3 of her close friends deal with cancer, right? 1 who died. Like, people are getting cancer. I have friends who've died from heart attacks and heart disease in their 40s. So we can say, oh, I'm okay. I grew up with all this. We're not okay. Like, my parents' generation is actually, they're okay, right? Our generation and our kids, let's just think about the children and the grandkids. That's why detoxification, healthy detoxification is so important. So when to detox? So I love that we have a good proportion of people in here that might be familiar with traditional Chinese medicine. Yes? A few of you are you guys familiar with traditional Chinese medicine? Okay, good. A lot of times when I bring up this slide, people have never really looked into traditional Chinese medicine. So what I love is that this is really great because it really helps you to understand seasonally why we want to do a detox in the spring. Now remember, we're detoxifying every single day, all the time. But the point is that there's a better time of year to give your liver a break and do a healthy detox, and that is in the spring. So you can see liver is number 1 for the spring. And I just want to highlight anger. Why do I want to highlight anger? Because when you do a detox program that's well supported, you might actually find that in the first week, you're angry and you don't know why. And it's because of the liver. So most of us, our liver is working. It's working 24 hours without a break. It's working the day shift. It's working the night shift. It's never getting a break to do what it actually needs to do. It's always fighting fires, okay? So when we understand and we give our liver a break, we remove things called liver loaders, our liver gets a chance to do what it's supposed to do and do it well. What we might find a side effect is that we're angry. So I thought that was really interesting. So that's why we do our program in the spring. Okay, so let's talk about the liver. I love the liver. So I'm teaching my daughter about the human body. We're doing homeschool, and it was like the liver. I'm like, oh, I love the liver. And she just didn't really understand why I would love an organ, but love the liver. Okay, why is it so important? It's involved in blood clotting and immune factor production, bile production, which helps with digestion, cholesterol and triglyceride production. Remember, we need cholesterol and triglycerides to live. We can't. It's really dangerous, actually. You can have your cholesterol too low. You need it to live. It helps regulate our hormones. I mean, that's so important these days. It does store our nutrients, so glucose, iron, copper, vitamins B12, A, and D. Really important for glucose balance. I talked about low glycemic eating at the beginning. So if you're eating foods that are spiking your blood sugar all the time, it's going to have a negative effect on your liver because, again, fighting fires all the time. And, of course, detoxification. Okay, so I'm going to talk about, this is my last big slide. I'm going to spend a bit of time here. Okay, so let's talk about the liver. So the liver is responsible, one of the things that it does is it helps get rid of our fat-soluble toxins. So when something is fat-soluble, like vitamin D, right? Vitamin D can be toxic in very, very high doses because it has to be eliminated through the liver. When something is water-soluble, it doesn't need to go through this process in the liver. But if it's not water-soluble, the liver has to do its job. Now, the liver needs a ton of support, okay? There's a two-phase process. And if you look at all the nutrients, so you've got vitamins, pretty much the whole B complex, folic acid, glutathione, flavonoids, glutamine, choline, taurine, all these big words. But luckily, thank you for us that Dr. Wentz, which Kendra will get into, but put those in the products for us so we don't have to think about it. But most people don't understand how much support your liver really needs. So basically what happens is this. So let's say your liver, can we see this on the live stream, guys? Yes? See well? Okay, so basically, if you imagine your liver has all of these channels. Okay, so it has all of these channels going from phase 1 to phase 2. Now, things that load the liver like alcohol, caffeine, prescription medications, environmental toxins, those things are priority 1. Okay, they must, like when you drink alcohol, it has to be processed by the liver immediately because it can kill you. And the liver knows that. So the liver will process alcohol first. And then your caffeine from your coffee. And then your prescription medication. And then the toxin from the plastic bottle you drink. And then, you know, your exposure to secondhand smoke. So when your liver is constantly fighting against these toxins and liver loaders, the things that it naturally does can't get through. So all of these channels are all blocked. And the liver, all the things that the liver should work with, for example, cholesterol and estrogen, what happens is they go through phase 1, they get here, and they can't get out. Because it's stuck. The liver is firefighting all the time. So what happens is your cholesterol, which is normal and natural and shouldn't harm you, goes from here and it goes back out into your bloodstream in a modified form that now becomes dangerous. Estrogen, which is a hormone, and it's a big challenge for women, especially perimenopausal, menopausal. Estrogen, fat soluble, needs to be processed by the liver to be normally eliminated. If your liver is not functioning optimally, your estrogen comes in and it gets sent back out into the bloodstream in this awkward byproduct that is not good for you. So that is why we see so many problems, and you can trace it back to the liver. Because we're just always firefighting. So phase 2 is always full. And the normal things, which is hormone regulation, cholesterol regulation, all that stuff that your liver is supposed to do all the time for you, it can't get to it, right? It just can't get to it. It's just always in firefighting mode. Does that make sense? Was that clear to you guys? Okay, I'm just about to wrap this up, but I will allow